Tonight we're going to listen to the silence. Not the silence of an empty room or a sleeping city or a quiet road after midnight, but the deeper silence above all of it, the silence between the stars. For as long as human beings have been able to look up, we have wondered whether someone else is out there. Somewhere beyond our moon, beyond Mars, beyond the pale river of the Milky Way, there may be other worlds turning in the dark. Worlds with oceans, clouds, mountains, cities, mines. Someone looking at their own sky and asking the same question we ask from ours. And yet, after all this time, after all our searching, all our telescopes, all our radio dishes pointed into the night, the universe has not answered. No clear signal, no voice, no greeting, no warning, only silence. And that silence is strange because the universe is not small. It is almost impossibly large. There are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and beyond our galaxy there are countless more, scattered across distances so vast that even light grows old while crossing them. With so many stars, so many planets, so much time, it feels like someone should have spoken by now. Maybe life is rarer than we ever imagined. Maybe intelligence is a fragile accident. Maybe civilizations rise, shine for a moment, and disappear before anyone hears them. Maybe the universe is silent because everyone is hiding. Or maybe, more terrifying than all of that, the silence is not empty at all. Maybe it is the sound of a universe where countless worlds tried to speak and did not survive long enough to be heard. Before we begin, if you enjoy quiet journeys through the deepest mysteries of space, take a moment to like the video or subscribe. It is a simple action, but it helps this channel reach more curious minds who still look up at the stars and wonder what is waiting in the dark. Now, let's begin. Let's start with the question humans have been asking for longer than history remembers. Are we alone? It's a simple question, only 3 words, but inside those 3 words is almost everything we have ever feared, hoped for, and imagined. Long before telescopes, before radio dishes, before rockets, before anyone knew what a galaxy was, human beings were already looking upward. They stood beside fires in the dark. They walked across deserts beneath cold stars. They sailed oceans by constellations. They slept under skies so clear that the Milky Way must have looked less like a faint blur and more like a glowing path across eternity. To them, the night sky was not empty. It was alive with meaning. Every bright point seemed to have a story. Every pattern became a figure. A hunter, a river, a queen, a serpent, a chariot, a god. The stars were not distant suns yet. They were signs, they were messages. They were lamps placed above the world by powers too large to understand. And maybe that was the first way humans tried to answer the silence. We looked up and filled it with voices. Thunder became anger. Comets became omens. Eclipses became warnings. Planets became wandering gods. The sky was not quiet because we could not bear for it to be quiet. We needed it to say something back. There is something deeply human about that. When a child lies awake in a dark room, they imagine shapes in the shadows. When a person walks alone at night, every small sound feels like a presence. And when an entire species wakes up on a small planet beneath an enormous sky, it does the same thing. It looks into the darkness and wonders what is hiding there. For thousands of years, the stars were close to us in imagination, even though they were impossibly far away in reality. They guided farmers, priests, travelers, sailors, kings, and storytellers. They told people when to plant, when to harvest, when rivers would flood, when seasons would change. The sky became a calendar, a map, a temple, and a mystery all at once. But underneath all of that practical knowledge, there was always another feeling. The feeling that the sky was watching, that we were not the only minds beneath it. Ancient people may not have asked about alien civilizations the way we do now. They were not imagining radio signals from another star system, or spacecraft crossing the void, or planets orbiting distant suns. But they understood the emotional shape of the question. They understood that Earth felt small beneath the heavens. They understood that the darkness above us was too vast to feel meaningless. So they filled it with beings. Gods lived in the sky. Spirits moved among the stars. Ancestors watched from above. Heavenly realms waited beyond the visible world. In nearly every culture, the sky became a place of presence. Not because people were foolish, but because silence is difficult for the human mind to accept. We are a species built for relationship. We listen for footsteps. We search for faces. We call out into forests, caves, oceans, and empty rooms, hoping something will respond. So when we looked up at the greatest darkness of all, of course we wondered who might be there. Then, slowly, the old sky began to change. Not the sky itself, but our understanding of it. The stars stopped being lamps and became suns. The planets stopped being wandering gods and became worlds. The moon became a place with mountains and shadows. The Milky Way became not a river of light, but a galaxy, an island of hundreds of billions of stars. And then we discovered that our galaxy was not the whole universe. There were others, so many others, galaxies beyond galaxies scattered outward in every direction, each one carrying its own storms of stars, dust, gas, planets, and time. The universe that once seemed like a dome above Earth became something almost impossible to hold inside the mind. And strangely, this did not make the old question disappear. It made it louder. Because when people believed Earth was the centre of creation, loneliness had a kind of explanation. Maybe we were special. Maybe the sky existed for us. Maybe the stars were decorations, symbols, or messages meant for human eyes. But modern astronomy removed that comfort. It showed us that Earth is not the centre of the universe. It is not even the centre of the solar system. Our sun is one ordinary star among hundreds of billions in the Milky Way. The Milky Way is one galaxy among a vast population of galaxies, and our entire visible universe may be only one part of a reality, even larger than we can observe. At first, this seems like good news for anyone hoping we are not alone. If Earth is not special, then maybe life is not special either. If the sun is ordinary, maybe other ordinary stars have planets like ours. If our galaxy is filled with worlds, maybe some of them have oceans, atmospheres, continents, storms, and living things. Maybe somewhere far away, under another sky, something has opened its eyes. This is where the ancient question becomes modern. It is no longer only a spiritual question, or a poetic question, or a lonely thought beneath the stars. It becomes a scientific problem. If the universe is so large, why have we found no one? And the more we learned, the sharper that problem became. We learned that stars are not rare. They are everywhere. We learned that planets are not rare either. For a long time, humans did not know whether other stars had planets at all. It was possible that our solar system was unusual. Maybe planets were rare accidents. Maybe most stars were alone. But then, one by one, we began finding worlds around other stars. Gas giants, super-Earths, rocky planets, planets scorched by their stars, planets frozen in darkness, planets orbiting two suns, planets so close to their stars that a year lasts only a few days, planets wandering without any star at all. The universe was not empty of worlds, it was crowded with them. And that made the silence stranger, because every new planet became another place where the question could live. Every new discovery widened the stage. Every distant world seemed to whisper the same possibility. Maybe here, maybe there, maybe somewhere. Maybe life began in a warm ocean beneath the red sun. Maybe intelligence rose under skies we will never see. Maybe another species built cities from materials we do not have names for. Maybe they looked up too. Maybe they wondered about us, long before we were here to wonder about them. But wondering is not the same as hearing. So far, the universe has not answered in any clear way. We have found no confirmed signal from another civilization, no message hidden in radio waves, no obvious artificial beacon flashing between the stars, no undeniable sign of a distant intelligence reshaping its solar system, no ancient probe waiting in orbit, no voice from the dark saying, "You are not alone." There have been moments of excitement, strange signals, unusual stars, mysterious patterns, possibilities that made people pause and look closer. But one by one, most became natural phenomena, instrument errors, interference, or mysteries without enough evidence to become proof. The silence remained. And this is where the question changes again. At first, are we alone? Sounds hopeful. It sounds like a child asking whether someone else is awake in the house. It sounds like a person calling across a valley waiting for an echo. But after enough silence, the question begins to feel heavier. Because if we are alone, then life on Earth is not just precious. It is almost unbearably fragile. Every forest, every ocean, every animal, every human memory, every song, every language, every face you've ever loved, all of it may be part of the only known flame of awareness in a universe of darkness. And if we're not alone, then the silence becomes even more troubling. Because then someone else is out there, or was out there, and still we hear nothing. Maybe they're too far away. Maybe they're too quiet. Maybe they died before their signals reached us. Maybe we are too young to understand what we are seeing. Maybe civilizations do not last. Maybe the universe is filled not with living voices, but with old light from worlds that have already gone cold. This is why the ancient question beneath the stars has never left us. Science changed the sky, but it did not remove the mystery. It only made the mystery larger. The gods disappeared from the constellations, but the silence behind them remained. The myths faded, but the longing stayed. We still look upward, we still search for patterns, we still listen. Only now, instead of campfires and stories, we use telescopes, satellites, radio observatories, and equations. We scan distant planets for traces of oxygen and methane. We search the skies for radio signals that do not sound natural. We study stars for signs of artificial structures. We send spacecraft into the darkness carrying pieces of Earth with them. And still, the question waits above us. Are we alone? It is the oldest question under the newest science. It belongs to ancient shepherds lying beneath desert stars, to sailors crossing black oceans, to astronomers watching data on quiet screens, to children pressing their faces against windows at night, and to anyone who has ever looked up and felt for one brief moment that the universe was too large for only us. Maybe one day the silence will break. Maybe a signal will arrive from a distant star. Maybe a pattern will appear in the data that cannot be explained away. Maybe we will look into the atmosphere of a far-off planet and see the chemical breath of living things. Maybe long after we're gone, something we sent into space will be found by another intelligence, and they will wonder who we were. But tonight, as we begin this journey, there is no answer yet. Only the stars. Only the dark. Only the enormous quiet above us. And the question that has followed humanity from the first fires to the edge of space. If the universe is full of places where life could exist, why does it feel so silent? To understand why the silence feels so strange, we have to begin with the numbers. Not because numbers make the mystery colder, but because in this case, they make it more haunting. When you look up at the night sky, even from a dark place far away from city lights, you're seeing only a tiny fraction of what exists. Maybe a few thousand stars with your naked eye. Maybe the pale band of the Milky Way stretching softly overhead. Maybe a planet shining brighter than the rest, steady and patient against the black. It feels enormous. But what you're seeing is almost nothing. Those stars are only the closest and brightest neighbours around us. They're like a few candles seen from inside one small room of an endless palace. The real galaxy around us is far larger than the sky reveals. The Milky Way contains hundreds of billions of stars. Not thousands, not millions, hundreds of billions. Each one is a sun, or something like a sun, burning in the dark with its own gravity, its own history, its own possibility of worlds around it. Some are bright blue giants that live fast and die violently. Some are yellow stars like our own sun, steady enough to warm planets for billions of years. Some are small red dwarfs, faint and long-lived, burning so slowly they may survive for trillions of years. And around many of these stars, there are planets. For a long time we did not know that for sure. We could see the planets in our own solar system, but the worlds around other stars were hidden from us. They were too small, too dim, too drowned in the glare of their suns. It was possible, at least in theory, that planets were rare. Maybe our solar system was an accident. Maybe most stars burned alone. But that idea did not survive. As our telescopes improved, the planets began to appear. Not directly at first, but through tiny clues. A star would dim slightly, again and again, as a planet crossed in front of it. Or a star would wobble, pulled gently by the gravity of an unseen companion. Little by little, the dark around other suns became crowded with worlds. Now we know planets are common. They may be one of the most ordinary things in the galaxy. Some stars have one, some have many. Some have giant planets larger than Jupiter. Some have rocky planets not so different in size from Earth. Some worlds orbit close enough to their stars to be scorched. Others drift so far away that their surfaces are locked in permanent ice. Some may have oceans beneath frozen shells. Some may have thick atmospheres, violent storms, strange chemistry, or moons where life could hide. And if planets are common around stars, then the Milky Way may contain billions of worlds, maybe tens of billions, maybe more. This is where the silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Because Earth is not made from rare ingredients. The atoms inside your body were not created specially for this planet. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, iron, calcium, these elements are scattered across the galaxy. They're forged in stars, thrown into space by stellar deaths, gathered again into clouds, planets, oceans, and living cells. The chemistry of life is not separate from the chemistry of the universe. We are not made from something outside nature. We are nature becoming aware of itself, built from old starlight and ancient dust. And if the ingredients are everywhere, if the stars are everywhere, if planets are everywhere, then the question becomes difficult to avoid. Why would life happen only here? Maybe it did not. Maybe life has begun many times. Maybe in quiet oceans beneath alien skies, chemistry has crossed that strange invisible line between non-living and living. Maybe there are worlds covered in microbial mats, worlds with dark seas full of simple organisms, worlds where strange plants or plant-like things turn sunlight into energy under a different colour of star. The universe could be alive in ways we've not yet learned to recognise, but the silence we're talking about is not only the silence of life, it is the silence of intelligence, the silence of technology, the silence of civilizations. Because even if simple life is common, the real mystery becomes sharper when we ask whether any of that life ever looks up, wonders, builds, listens, and sends something into the dark. And again, the numbers seem to whisper that someone should have. Our galaxy is old. The Milky Way formed billions of years before Earth existed. Many stars are older than our Sun. Many planets may have had a head start of 1 billion, 2 billion, even several billion years. That is not a small advantage. On Earth, 1 billion years is not just a long time. It is enough time for oceans to change, continents to move, atmospheres to transform, entire forms of life to rise and vanish. A civilization only a few thousand years older than us might seem advanced. A civilization 1 million years older would be almost impossible to imagine. A civilization 1 billion years older would not feel like a civilization at all. It would feel like a force of nature. So if intelligent life appeared somewhere else long before humans, then the galaxy has had enough time for someone to become very old, old enough to spread, old enough to build machines that travel between stars, old enough to change the energy of their home system, old enough to leave traces that should be visible, and yet we do not see them. We do not see obvious signs of galaxy-wide engineering. We do not see clear artificial signals pouring from the stars. We do not see spacecraft arriving in our skies from ancient civilizations that had millions of years to cross the Milky Way. We do not see great structures around nearby stars collecting their light. We do not see the unmistakable signature of intelligence written across the heavens. At least, not yet, and that small phrase matters. Not yet, because we've only been listening for a very short time. Human radio technology is young. Our serious search for signals from other civilizations is even younger. Compared to the age of the galaxy, our listening period is almost nothing. It is like opening your eyes for 1 second in the middle of a long night and deciding the room is empty because you did not immediately see anyone move. Maybe we have not looked long enough. Maybe we've not looked in the right way. Maybe the signals are not radio signals. Maybe they're too weak, too brief, too rare, too advanced or too strange for us to understand. Maybe the universe is speaking in a language we have not invented the ears to hear. That is possible. But still the numbers continue to trouble us, because the galaxy is not just large, it is rich with chances. Every star is another chance. Every planet is another chance. Every moon with a hidden ocean is another chance. Every warm, rocky world, every stable orbit, every ancient sun, every chemical shoreline is another roll of the cosmic dice. And there have been so many rolls. If life is easy, the galaxy should be alive. If intelligence is likely, the galaxy should be awake. If civilizations survive, the galaxy should not be silent. This is why the silence is not a small mystery. It is not merely a missing signal. It is a contradiction between what the numbers seem to suggest and what the night gives back to us. The sky looks full. The galaxy is full of stars. The stars are full of planets. The planets may be full of possibilities, but when we listen, we hear nothing certain. No neighbour calling, no ancient beacon, no clear sign that another mind has crossed the same darkness with its own question. And the more planets we discover, the stranger this becomes. Every new world should make us feel less alone. In one way, it does. It tells us Earth is not floating in a universe without companions. There are worlds everywhere, more than our ancestors could have imagined. But in another way, each discovery deepens the silence. Because now the silence has more places to come from, more worlds that could have spoken, more skies beneath which someone might have wandered, more oceans where life might have begun, more civilizations that might have risen, listened, called out and vanished before their voice reached us. The universe is not silent because there is nowhere for life to be. That would be easier to understand. The universe is silent even though there are countless places where life might have been, and that is what makes the silence terrifying. not emptiness, possibility, a universe full of possible voices, and yet no voice clear enough to answer ours. So the question grows larger. It is no longer only, are we alone? It becomes something more unsettling. With so many stars, so many planets, and so many chances, why has the universe remained quiet for so long? And to feel the full weight of that question, we have to add one more thing, not just space, time. Time is what turns the silence from strange into haunting. Because the universe is not only large, it is old, almost unimaginably old. The universe began about 13.8 billion years ago. That number is easy to say, but difficult to feel. 1 billion years is already beyond the scale of human memory, beyond history, beyond civilization, beyond language, beyond anything our minds were built to understand. And the universe has had almost 14 of them. 14 billion years of stars forming, burning, dying, exploding, and seeding space with heavier elements. 14 billion years of galaxies colliding and reshaping themselves. 14 billion years of planets gathering from dust, cooling into worlds, growing oceans, building atmospheres, and waiting beneath the light of their suns. Earth is old too, but not as old as the universe. Our planet formed about 4.5 billion years ago. The first life on Earth may have appeared more than 3.5 billion years ago, perhaps even earlier. For most of that time, Earth did not look like a world of intelligence. It did not have cities, machines, satellites, books, music, or radio towers. It had oceans, chemistry, storms, microbes, and slow change. Life was here, but it was quiet. For billions of years, if another civilization had pointed a telescope toward Earth, they might have seen a living planet, but not a technological one. No lights on the night side, no artificial radio noise, no signs of industry, no spacecraft leaving the atmosphere. Just a small blue world, alive but silent. That alone should make us careful, because even on the only planet where we know life exists, intelligence took a very long time to appear, and technology took even longer. Modern humans have existed for only a tiny fraction of Earth's history. Agriculture is only around 10,000 years old. Cities are younger than that. Radio technology is barely more than a century old. Spaceflight is younger still. Compared to the age of Earth, our technological civilization is not even a blink. It is less than a blink. It is the faintest spark at the end of a very long darkness. And yet, in the larger timeline of the galaxy, Earth is not especially early. The Milky Way was already ancient when the Sun formed. Many stars came before ours. Many planets formed before Earth. Some of those planets may have been stable and warm while Earth was still only dust orbiting inside a young cloud of gas. Imagine a planet like Earth, but older. Not a few thousand years older, not 1 million, 2 billion years older. On that world, oceans may have existed long before ours. Continents may have shifted and broken apart long before Earth had its first complex animals. Life, if it began there, may have had an enormous head start. And if intelligence appeared even once, that civilization would have had time to become something we can barely imagine. A civilization only 1,000 years ahead of us could seem miraculous. Think of how different we are from people 1,000 years ago. They had no electricity, no airplanes, no antibiotics, no satellites, no computers, no images of Earth from space. To them, our world would look almost magical. Now imagine a civilization 10,000 years ahead, 100,000, 1 million. A civilization 1 million years older than us would not simply have better machines. It might have a completely different relationship with matter, energy, biology, and time. It might build in ways we would not recognize as building. It might travel in ways we would not recognize as travel. It might communicate through methods we have not discovered. It might not live on planets anymore. It might not need bodies like ours. It might not even think in ways we would understand as thought. And 1,000,000 years is small on cosmic timescales. That is the unsettling part. The galaxy has had room for civilizations far older than humanity. Not just slightly older, not just more advanced, ancient beyond imagination. If even one technological species arose long before us and survived, then it had time to spread. Even slow spacecraft could cross the galaxy over millions of years. They would not need to travel near the speed of light. They wouldn't need magical engines. They could move from star to star gradually, sending probes, machines, or self-replicating explorers. A civilization could expand like a slow tide, not quickly from a human point of view, but easily within the lifetime of the galaxy. The Milky Way is about 100,000 light-years across. That sounds impossibly wide, and for a human lifetime, it is. But for civilization with millions of years, it becomes smaller. If machines moved from star to star, waited, copied themselves, and moved again, the galaxy could be explored many times over. Not in a decade, not in a century, but in less time than the galaxy has already had. So the silence becomes more difficult. If intelligent life is common, someone should have come before us. If someone came before us, they should have had time to spread. If they spread, we might expect to see signs. Not necessarily spaceships hovering above Earth, not necessarily aliens walking through our streets, but traces, patterns, energy use, artificial structures, stars behaving strangely, probes hidden in stable orbits, signals left behind like lighthouses. Something. The universe has had enough time for someone to leave a footprint, and yet we have not found one. At least, not one we can prove. That last part matters, because space is difficult to search. The galaxy is enormous, and our instruments are still young. We've not examined every star closely. We've not listened to every frequency for long periods. We've not searched every asteroid, every moon, every quiet shadow where an ancient probe could rest unnoticed. Our silence may be partly caused by our own limits. We are new listeners. For most of human history, we were not listening at all. The universe could have been filled with signals, and we would have had no way to hear them. A message could have passed Earth when dinosaurs walked beneath the trees. Another could have passed when the first humans were learning to use fire. Another could have crossed our world in the age of stone tools, invisible to every living creature here. A civilization might have called out for 10,000 years, and still we could have missed it. This is one of the cruelest parts of the mystery. Space separates civilizations by distance. Time separates them even more. Two intelligent species may exist in the same galaxy and never overlap in the right way. One may rise too early, another too late. One may listen after the other has fallen silent. One may send a signal that arrives at a dead world. Another may receive a message from a civilization that vanished before the signal even crossed the first 1,000 light years. The galaxy may not be empty. It may simply be badly timed. Imagine standing on a dark shore at night. Far across the ocean, another person stands on another shore. You both have lanterns. You both want to know if someone else is there. But you lift your lantern only after theirs has gone out. They call during a storm and you hear only waves. You call years later and they are gone. That may be what the universe is like. Not a room full of people refusing to speak, but a vast ocean where lights appear and disappear across impossible distances, rarely close enough in time to see one another. Still, the older the universe becomes in our understanding, the more the question returns. Surely, somewhere, someone should have lasted. Surely, somewhere, a civilization should have survived long enough to become visible. Surely, if the galaxy has had billions of years, at least one intelligence should have crossed the fragile stage we're in now and become something stable, ancient, and loud. But we do not see that. We see stars, we see dust, we see galaxies, we see natural violence on scales beyond imagination, but no confirmed sign of a mind. And this is where the silence begins to feel less like a mystery and more like a shadow. Maybe life begins often, but intelligence rarely. Maybe intelligence appears, but technology destroys itself. Maybe civilizations become quiet by choice. Maybe the galaxy is full of ruins too cold and distant for us to recognize. Or maybe the step from life to lasting civilization is so dangerous that almost no one passes it. The universe has had enough time. That is the terrifying thing. Enough time for life, enough time for intelligence, enough time for travel, enough time for messages, enough time for someone somewhere to become impossible to miss. And yet the night remains quiet, which means the silence is not just the silence of distance. It is the silence of billions of years. And that contradiction has a name attached to one of the most unsettling questions science has ever asked. Where is everybody? It's a question so simple that it almost feels too small for the mystery it carries. But sometimes the deepest questions are like that. They do not arrive dressed in complex language. They do not need equations to sound frightening. They sit quietly in the mind, plain and heavy, waiting for everything else we know to gather around them. Where is everybody? The question is often connected to the physicist Enrico Fermi, who was having a casual conversation with other scientists in 1950. They were talking about flying saucers, space travel, and the possibility of intelligent life beyond Earth. The details of that conversation have been repeated many times in different ways, but the heart of it remains the same. If the galaxy is old, if stars are everywhere, if planets are common, if life has had so many chances to begin, then why have we not seen anyone? Why has no one arrived? Why has no signal clearly reached us? Why does the sky look natural, untouched and silent? That is the Fermi Paradox. A paradox is not just a question. It is a conflict between things that both seem true. On one side, the universe seems like it should be full of possibilities. The Milky Way has hundreds of billions of stars. Many of those stars have planets. Some planets may be rocky. Some may have water. Some may have atmospheres. Some may be old enough for life to begin, evolve, and perhaps become intelligent. On the other side, we have no confirmed evidence of another technological civilization. No clear radio message, no visiting probe, no obvious artificial structure around another star, no visible empire spreading across the galaxy, no undeniable sign that someone else has looked into the same darkness and left a mark. The numbers whisper one thing, the silence says another, and that is why the paradox feels so uncomfortable. It is not simply asking whether aliens exist. That version of the question is too small, too playful, too easy to turn into science fiction. The real question is more disturbing. If intelligent life is possible, and if the universe gives it so many chances, why does the universe look as though it has never happened anywhere else? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe life is rare. Maybe Earth is a miracle in the deepest sense of the word. Not magical, but statistically precious. A planet where every necessary condition lined up in just the right way. A stable star, a protective magnetic field, liquid water, plate tectonics, a large moon, the right chemistry, the right impacts, the right climate cycles, enough time, not too much disaster, not too little change. Maybe most planets fail at one of those steps. Maybe they're too hot, too cold, too dry, too unstable, too violent, too poisoned, too young, too old, too exposed to radiation, or too locked beneath ice. Maybe the galaxy is filled with worlds that almost became alive. Almost. That word is haunting. An ocean that almost made cells. A planet that almost kept its atmosphere. A moon that almost had warmth. A chemistry that almost learned to copy itself. Maybe the universe is full of almosts, but even if simple life is rare, the paradox does not disappear completely, because the universe is so large that even rare things can happen many times. A 1 in a billion chance sounds impossible, until the galaxy offers hundreds of billions of opportunities. And beyond the galaxy, there are more galaxies than the human mind can comfortably hold, so perhaps simple life exists. Perhaps it is common. Perhaps the real difficulty is intelligence. This answer feels believable because even on Earth, life spent most of its history being quiet. For billions of years, there were no cities, no tools, no mathematics, no telescopes, no songs sent into space. Life existed, but it did not ask questions. It did not build antennas. It did not wonder about the stars. The Earth was alive long before it was aware. Maybe that is normal. Maybe the galaxy is covered with living worlds that never become technological. Seas of microbes, forests without fire, creatures without language, eyes that look upward but do not understand what stars are. Life everywhere, but no one speaking. In that version of the universe, we are not alone in biology, but we may be alone in thought, or nearly alone, and that is a strange kind of loneliness. But perhaps intelligence is not the final barrier either. Maybe intelligent species appear often enough. Maybe they learn, cooperate, hunt, build shelters, make tools, pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Maybe some even discover fire, agriculture, writing, industry, electricity, and radio. And then something happens. This is where the Fermi Paradox becomes darker. Because if civilizations rise but do not last, the silence may be filled with failure. A world discovers the power of the atom and destroys itself. Another heats its climate beyond repair. Another builds machines it cannot control. Another exhausts its resources before it learns to leave its planet. Another collapses into war, disease, or social breakdown. Another survives for a while, then turns inward and stops reaching outward. A civilization does not need to vanish completely to become silent. It only needs to stop broadcasting. It only needs to lose the ability or the desire to be heard. Our own presence as a detectable civilization is very young. The time between the first radio signals and now is almost nothing. A thin glow around one small planet. A brief burst in a galaxy billions of years old. If another civilization had a similar brief window, we could easily miss it. Their signals might have passed Earth before humans had instruments to detect them. Their civilization might have fallen silent before we began listening. Or their messages might still be travelling, moving patiently across the dark thousands of years away from reaching us. The galaxy may contain many voices that never overlap. That is one possible answer. But there are others. Maybe advanced civilizations do not use radio for very long. Maybe radio is only a primitive stage, like smoke signals or drums, useful for a moment, then replaced by something quieter, narrower, more efficient and invisible to outsiders. From far away, Earth is already becoming harder to overhear in some ways. Our technology is changing. Communications are more directed, more fiber-based, more compressed, more careful. A young civilization might leak noise into space for a century or two, then grow quiet without dying. So maybe the universe is not silent because no one exists. Maybe it is silent because advanced technology becomes silent. A civilization older than ours may not fill the sky with loud radio waves. It may communicate through tight beams, quantum systems, neutrino signals, gravitational waves, or methods we have not imagined. To us, their world would appear quiet, not because it is dead, but because we are listening with the wrong ears. This answer is less terrifying in one way, but only in one way. Because if the universe is speaking in ways we cannot understand, then we are like an animal hearing thunder, but not language, surrounded by meaning, unable to recognize it. Then there is the possibility that advanced civilizations are visible, but not in the way we expect. Maybe we're searching for the wrong signs. We imagine metal ships, radio messages, glowing cities, and giant structures around stars, because those are extensions of our own technology. But another intelligence might not expand like humans would. It might choose stability over growth. It might live in virtual worlds. It might move into deep space where energy use is quieter. It might merge with its environment so completely that we mistake it for nature. Civilization millions of years older than ours might not look artificial to us. It might look like weather, or geology, or a star behaving slightly strangely, or nothing at all. And that leads to one of the most unsettling possibilities. Maybe the evidence is there, and we simply do not know how to read it. The universe may not be hiding its answers. We may just be too young to understand them. Still, Fermi's question remains, because the more possibilities we imagine, the more each one says something uncomfortable. If life is rare, then we are fragile and almost alone. If intelligence is rare, then consciousness is a brief accident in a mostly mindless cosmos. If civilizations destroy themselves, then our future may be more dangerous than we want to believe. If advanced civilizations hide, then the universe may be more threatening than it appears. If they are quiet by nature, then we may listen forever and never know who shares the dark with us. Every answer has a shadow. That is why the Fermi Paradox has lasted. It does not survive because we have no ideas. It survives because we have too many ideas, and none of them are comforting enough to close the question. The paradox is like standing in a vast forest at night. You know the forest is large enough to hold other people. You know there are paths, rivers, clearings, places where fires could burn. You call out once, then again, then again. Nothing answers. At first you think perhaps no one is there. Then you wonder if someone is there but too far away. Then you wonder if they heard you and chose not to respond. Then you wonder if they tried to answer long ago and their voice never reached you. Then, slowly, another thought appears. Maybe the silence itself is information. Maybe the quiet is not a lack of evidence. Maybe it is the evidence. Not proof of one answer, but a warning that something in the path from life to lasting civilization is harder, rarer, or more dangerous than we imagined. And if that is true, then the next question becomes unavoidable. Where, exactly, is the barrier? Is it behind us, or is it still waiting ahead? Maybe the barrier's at the very beginning, before cities, before intelligence, before eyes, bones, forests, oceans filled with movement, or creatures crawling onto land. Maybe the hardest step in the universe is not building a radio telescope. Maybe it is becoming alive at all. This is one of the simplest answers to the silence, and one of the most unsettling. The universe may be filled with planets that look promising from a distance. Worlds with the right size, the right temperature, the right kind of star, maybe even water on their surfaces. From far away, they might seem like places where life should begin. But perhaps life does not begin easily. Perhaps Earth is not special because it has life now, but because life started here in the first place. That first step remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. We know life exists, we know it is made from chemistry, we know living things are built from atoms that follow the same physical laws as everything else in the universe. There is no magical substance inside a cell, no separate force that makes life outside nature, and yet somewhere in Earth's ancient past, non-living chemistry became living biology. Molecules began copying themselves. Chemistry became memory. Reactions became systems, systems became cells, and the planet changed forever. But we do not yet know exactly how that happened. We have ideas, many ideas. Life may have begun in warm, shallow pools where sunlight, minerals, wetting and drying cycles helped simple molecules become more complex. Or it may have begun around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, where hot, chemical-rich water rose from the ocean floor and created natural energy gradients. Or perhaps the building blocks of life arrived partly from space, carried by comets, asteroids, or interstellar dust, and then assembled on Earth. Each idea has evidence. Each idea has problems. And the most important question remains open. How likely is it? Did life begin on Earth because the right chemistry almost inevitably produces biology when conditions are good enough? Or did life begin because of a chain of rare accidents so unlikely that most habitable planets remain dead forever? We do not know. That uncertainty is enormous. Because if life begins easily, then the galaxy may be full of it. Microbes in warm alien oceans, simple organisms beneath ice, strange ecosystems hidden under red suns. Life might be common, quiet and nearly everywhere, but if life begins rarely, then the silence becomes easier to explain and harder to bear. It would mean that the universe may have many worlds that are almost alive. Worlds with oceans, worlds with lightning, worlds with volcanoes breathing into thick atmospheres, worlds with carbon chemistry swirling for billions of years, worlds with tides, minerals, sunlight, warmth and time. But no cells, no growth, no hunger, no reproduction, no evolution, just chemistry repeating itself without ever crossing the line. Imagine a planet like early Earth, but silent forever, a blue world orbiting a gentle star, clouds moving across its sky, rain falling into ancient seas, waves breaking against black volcanic shores, warm pools forming and evaporating, lightning flashing over empty water, minerals gathering in delicate layers, organic molecules forming, breaking, forming again, for 1,000,000 years, for 100 million, for 1 billion, and still nothing wakes up. No first cell, no first ancestor, no tiny living thing dividing in the dark. From space the planet might look hopeful, beautiful even, a place that seems ready for life. But beauty is not biology. Water is not life. Chemistry is not life. A habitable planet is not the same as an inhabited planet. That difference may be one of the most important differences in the universe. We often imagine that if we find an Earth-like planet, we've found a living world. But Earth-like does not mean Earth. A planet can have the right temperature and still be sterile. It can have oceans and still be empty. It can have an atmosphere and still never produce anything that breathes it. The universe may be full of worlds that are suitable for life in the same way an empty house is suitable for a family. The rooms are there, the windows are open, the light comes in, but no one lives inside. This possibility is terrifying because it turns abundance into loneliness. The stars may have countless planets, but most of them may be quiet stones, frozen oceans, poisonous skies, or almost Earths where the miracle never happened. An Earth, in that case, becomes far more precious than we usually allow ourselves to feel. Every living thing here, every blade of grass, every insect, every tree, every bird, every whale moving through the dark ocean, every human hand, every memory, every breath would belong to something extraordinarily rare. Not just rare in our solar system, rare across the galaxy. Maybe the first cell was the filter. Maybe the great silence began not with civilizations destroying themselves, but with worlds that never learned how to live. There is another reason this idea matters. If life is almost impossible, then the universe can be full of planets and still be silent. The numbers can be huge, and yet the result can still be loneliness. A galaxy with billions of Earth-sized planets may sound alive to us, but if the odds of life beginning are 1 in a trillion, then almost all of those worlds are only stages where the play never begins. And because we have only one example of life, we cannot calculate the odds. This is the great difficulty. We know life happened once, here. But one example tells us very little. If we found life somewhere else in our own solar system, even simple microbial life, that would change everything. If Mars once had life, or if Europa or Enceladus has life beneath its ice, then life may begin whenever conditions are right. It would suggest that biology is not an impossible accident, but a common outcome of chemistry. But if we search Mars, Europa, Enceladus, Titan, and every promising place nearby and find nothing, the silence becomes heavier. It would not prove life is rare everywhere, but it would make Earth feel more alone. For now, we do not know which universe we live in. A universe where life blooms easily wherever water and energy meet, or a universe where life almost never starts, even when the conditions seem perfect, and that uncertainty hangs over every search for alien signals. Because before there can be radio messages, there must be life. Before there can be telescopes, there must be cells. Before there can be cities under another sun, there must be some first fragile thing that learns to copy itself and survive. Maybe the terrifying reason the universe is silent is that this first step almost never happens. Maybe most worlds never get past chemistry. Maybe the night sky is not filled with civilizations hiding or dying or calling too faintly for us to hear. Maybe it is filled with planets that never had anyone to call. And yet, even this answer does not close the mystery, because life did happen here. Somehow, on this small world, chemistry crossed the line. The first living systems appeared. They survived. They changed. They spread through oceans and stone and air. They endured impacts, ice ages, volcanic disasters, mass extinctions, and the slow violence of time. Life began. And once life began, it did not stay simple forever. At least not here. So if life can begin, another question rises from beneath it. Why did it take so long to become aware of the stars? That question brings us to another possible reason for the silence. Maybe life itself is not the rarest thing. Maybe simple life begins often. Maybe the galaxy has many living worlds. Maybe there are oceans beneath alien skies where tiny organisms drift in darkness, divide, adapt, and survive. Maybe frozen moons hide warm seas where chemistry has already become biology. Maybe planets around red stars are covered in strange microbial life, clinging to rocks, floating in clouds, or living deep underground. Maybe life is not the miracle. Maybe intelligence is, because there is a difference between a living planet and a speaking one. Earth teaches us that difference very clearly. For most of Earth's history, life existed without technology. It existed without language, without cities, without machines, without mathematics, without astronomy, without the idea of a universe at all. Life filled the oceans for billions of years, but it did not send messages into space. It did not build telescopes. It did not ask where everyone was. It lived. It changed. It endured. But it was quiet. Tiny organisms dominated the planet for an almost unimaginable length of time. They shaped the atmosphere. They transformed chemistry. They spread through water, soil, and stone. They were successful in the deepest biological sense. They survived. And survival is what evolution rewards. Not intelligence, not curiosity, not the ability to build a radio dish. Evolution does not aim toward technology. It does not have a destination. It does not look forward and decide that one day a species should discover electricity, split the atom, and point antennas at the sky. Evolution only works with the moment. It favors what helps a living thing survive and reproduce in its environment. For billions of years, bacteria were enough. They did not need minds like ours. They did not need eyes looking up at constellations. They did not need stories, tools, or fire. And even when complex life finally appeared, intelligence was still not guaranteed. The oceans filled with creatures. The land grew green. Animals crawled, walked, hunted, flew, and died. Eyes evolved many times. Teeth evolved. Wings evolved. Armor evolved. Venom evolved. Speed evolved. Camouflage evolved. But radio telescopes did not evolve. For hundreds of millions of years, Earth was full of life that could see the sky but not understand it. Think of the dinosaurs. They ruled the planet for more than 150 million years. That is a span of time so long that human civilization becomes almost invisible beside it. Dinosaurs spread across continents. They adapted into countless forms. Some were enormous, some were fast, some were social, some were intelligent in their own way. Some eventually gave rise to birds, which are still with us now. But they did not build cities, they did not discover radio, they did not leave machines on the moon. For 150 million years, Earth had complex animals under the stars, and the stars heard nothing. That should make us pause, because if another planet has life, even complex life, it may still never produce a technological civilization. It might have forests, oceans, predators, migrations, songs, nests, colours and beauty beyond anything on Earth. It might be alive in every direction, but no one there may ever ask what a star is. No one may ever write a number. No one may ever learn to control fire. No one may ever build a machine that can call across the dark. The galaxy could be full of living worlds that are not silent because they are dead, but because they have no reason to speak. That kind of universe is not empty. It is stranger than empty. It is full of life that never becomes a voice, and intelligence, when it does appear, may depend on a chain of accidents so specific that it almost never repeats. On Earth, intelligence did not emerge from life alone. It required bodies capable of manipulating the world. It required senses sharp enough to observe patterns. It required social groups where learning could be shared. It required memory, communication, curiosity, pressure from changing environments. Perhaps it required climate instability, forcing adaptation. Perhaps it required hands or something like hands. Perhaps it required fire. Fire is easy to overlook, but it may be one of the most important steps in the history of technology. A dolphin may be intelligent, but it lives in water. It cannot easily make fire. It cannot smelt metal. It cannot build an electrical system in the ocean. An octopus can solve problems, open containers, change colour, and explore with astonishing sensitivity, but it lives a short life and does not easily pass complex culture from one generation to the next. Elephants remember. Crows use tools. Whales communicate across enormous distances. Many animals are far more intelligent than humans once believed, but intelligence alone is not enough. A species needs the right kind of body, the right environment, the right social structure, and the right opportunities. It needs to discover that the world can be changed. It needs to pass that discovery forward. It needs a long chain of knowledge where each generation adds something and the next generation does not lose it. That chain is fragile. Break it often enough, and technology never rises. A planet may produce clever animals again and again, but never produce civilization. Intelligence may appear as a spark, then fade. A species may become smart enough to survive, but not smart enough to build. Or smart enough to build, but not curious enough to look beyond its own world. And perhaps there is another uncomfortable possibility. Maybe intelligence is not always useful. Human beings are proud of intelligence because it made us powerful. It allowed us to hunt, farm, build, heal, calculate, write, remember, and leave Earth. But intelligence also brings anxiety, conflict, ambition, and the ability to create dangers nature never gave us. It allows a species to imagine the future, but also to fear it. It allows cooperation, but also large-scale war. It creates technology, but technology can become unstable. On many worlds, intelligence may not be favored for long. A species that becomes too clever might destroy its environment, or overhunt its food, or compete with itself, or become vulnerable because large brains require enormous energy. There is no guarantee that evolution will keep moving toward greater intelligence once it appears. On Earth, humans are not the inevitable final product of life. We are one branch, a recent branch, a fragile branch. If an asteroid had not struck Earth 66 million years ago, clearing ecological space after the age of dinosaurs, mammals might never have risen in the same way. If climates had not shifted, if forests had not changed, if primates had not adapted, if ancestors had not stood upright, if hands had not become free, if language had not deepened, if fire had not been mastered, if culture had not accumulated, change any part of the chain, and there may be no radio signals from Earth, no spacecraft, no question, no one listening. This is why intelligence may be a rare accident, not because life cannot become complex, but because technological intelligence may require many doors to open in the right order. Each door may be unlikely, each door may close easily, and beyond all of them waits a species capable not only of surviving, but of understanding enough to wonder about the universe. Maybe most life never reaches that point. Maybe the galaxy has many planets where living things breathe, swim, hunt, grow, and die beneath beautiful skies, but no one names the stars. Maybe there are worlds with creatures as graceful as birds, as social as wolves, as intelligent as dolphins, as patient as trees, but no science, no mathematics, no machines, no antennas, no signal. In such universe, the silence is not the silence of death. It is the silence of life that never became aware enough to call, and that is almost more haunting, because it means the universe could be alive but not awake. A vast garden without witnesses, 1,000 oceans without memory, 1 billion forests under alien moons, whispering in winds no mind has ever measured. Then Earth becomes stranger again. Not simply a living planet, but a planet where life opened its eyes and looked back at the cosmos. A planet where matter learned to ask what matter is. A planet where atoms built telescopes to study the stars that made them. That may be rare, very rare. But even if intelligence is rare, the mystery still does not end. Because intelligence did happen here. Technology happened here. A species did learn to listen. A planet did become loud, at least for a little while. So if the universe has produced even one technological civilization, maybe it has produced others. And if others have reached technology, then the silence becomes darker again. Because perhaps the problem is not becoming intelligent. Perhaps the problem is surviving what intelligence creates. This possibility has a name, the Great Filter. It is one of the most unsettling ideas connected to the silence of the universe, because it does not simply ask whether life exists elsewhere. It asks whether there is something in the path from lifeless matter to lasting civilization that almost no world can pass. Imagine the history of a planet as a long series of doors. The first door is chemistry becoming life. The next is simple life surviving, then complex cells, then multicellular organisms, then intelligence, then tools, then technology, then the ability to leave the home planet, then the ability to survive for thousands, millions, perhaps billions of years without destroying itself or being destroyed. For a civilization to become visible across the galaxy, it has to pass through many doors. The great filter is the idea that one of those doors is almost impossible to get through. Maybe many planets reach the early doors and fail. Maybe many worlds become alive but never complex. Maybe many grow complex life but never intelligence. Maybe many become intelligent but never technological. Or maybe the most dangerous door comes after technology, when a species becomes powerful enough to damage itself before it becomes wise enough to survive. That is why the great filter is so frightening. It can be behind us, or it can be ahead of us. If the great filter is behind us, then humanity may be extraordinarily rare. Maybe life almost never begins. Maybe complex cells are nearly impossible. Maybe intelligence is the accident that almost never happens. In that case, Earth has already passed through the hardest steps. We may be lonely, but we're also lucky, painfully lucky. We would be the result of a chain of events so unlikely that the silence makes sense. The universe is quiet because almost no one reaches the point where they can listen. That version of the great filter is haunting, but it carries a little hope. It means the most dangerous barriers may already be passed. But if the great filter is ahead of us, then the silence becomes something much darker. It means many civilizations may reach our stage. They may discover fire, industry, electricity, radio, spaceflight. They may look up, wonder, build telescopes, and begin to understand their place in the universe. They may stand exactly where we stand now, young and brilliant and vulnerable. And then they fail, again and again, across planet after planet, star after star, civilization after civilization. They become loud for a moment, then disappear. The silence of the universe would not mean no one ever existed. It would mean almost no one survived. This is the terrifying version of the great filter, because it turns the sky into a warning. Every quiet star becomes a question. Every empty signal becomes a possibility. Maybe someone once lived there. Maybe they reached our level. Maybe they celebrated their first satellites, their first images of their world from space, their first machines touching other planets. Maybe they believed they were at the beginning of a great future. And then something happened. Not necessarily one dramatic disaster, not always a single explosion or a single war or a single machine turning against them. Sometimes civilizations may collapse slowly. Their climate changes faster than their politics can respond. Their resources run thin. Their technologies become too powerful for their wisdom. Their societies fracture. Their tools amplify fear, greed, and conflict. They solve many problems but create new ones faster. A civilization can die in fire, but it can also die in delay. It can understand the danger and still fail to move quickly enough. This is what makes the great filter feel personal. It is not only about alien worlds, it is about us. Humanity is the only technological civilization we know, and we are young. We've had radio for barely more than a century. We've had nuclear weapons for less than a century. We've had the ability to alter the planet's atmosphere on a global scale without fully understanding the consequences. We're beginning to build artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and technologies that may become more powerful than the institutions designed to control them. We are clever, but cleverness is not the same as wisdom. A species can learn how to release enormous energy before it learns restraint. It can connect the world before it learns how to protect truth. It can build machines that act faster than its ethics. It can change its climate before it can agree on what the change means. It can reach space while still carrying every old conflict with it. Maybe that is the filter. Not one single invention, but the dangerous gap between intelligence and maturity. The time when a species becomes powerful enough to transform its world, but not yet unified or careful enough to protect it. If that gap is common, then the silence of the universe becomes easier to understand. Civilizations may appear often, but their loud period may be short. They light up for a few hundred years, maybe a few thousand, then fade. From far away, they're almost impossible to catch. A little burst of radio, little infrared glow, a few probes, then quiet again. The galaxy could be filled with worlds that reached the edge of becoming something greater and then fell back into darkness. Some may have destroyed themselves completely. Others may have survived biologically, but lost their technology. Imagine a world after collapse. The cities abandoned, the satellites dead, the transmitters silent, forests growing through cracked roads, oceans moving under empty skies. Life continues, but the voice is gone. From Earth, such a world would look natural. A quiet planet, no signal, no obvious sign that anyone had ever looked up. Time would erase almost everything. Buildings would fall, metals would corrode, radiation would fade, surfaces would be buried by dust, water, ice, and geology. After millions of years, even a technological civilization might leave only subtle chemical traces in rock layers. From across the stars, we might never know it existed. This is an important part of the Great Filter. Failure does not always leave monuments. Sometimes it leaves silence. And if the universe is old enough, many failed civilizations could have vanished so completely that their homeworlds now look untouched. That thought changes how we see the night sky. The stars no longer look simply empty. They look unreadable. A planet orbiting one of them might be lifeless, or alive but unintelligent, or intelligent but quiet, or post-civilizational, or hiding, or dead. From here, all of those possibilities can look exactly the same. Just a point of light, just data, just distance. The Great Filter does not tell us which answer is true. It only gives the silence a shape. It says that somewhere, something may be difficult enough to stop almost everyone. And the most uncomfortable part is that discovering simple alien life would not necessarily be good news. At first, it would feel like the greatest discovery in human history. Proof that life is not unique to Earth. Proof that biology can happen elsewhere. Proof that the universe is more alive than we knew. But in the logic of the Great Filter, that discovery would move the filter forward. If we find simple life nearby, then the first step is not impossible. If we find complex life, then complexity is not impossible. If we find intelligent but non-technological life, then intelligence is not impossible. Each discovery would mean the hardest barrier may still be ahead. And if we ever found the ruins of a dead technological civilization, the message would be even darker. It would mean someone reached our stage before and did not continue. That is why the Great Filter is not just a theory. It is a mirror. When we ask why the universe is silent, we are also asking what kind of future awaits us. Are we rare because we've already passed the impossible steps? Or are we common because many worlds reach this point, and rare only because almost none survive beyond it? We do not know, but the silence gives us no comfort. It does not say the danger is behind us. It does not say the path ahead is clear. It only waits. And as we listen to that silence, we have to consider the possibility that civilizations may not vanish because they were foolish or weak. They may vanish because the transition from a young technological species to a lasting cosmic civilization is one of the hardest transitions in nature. Maybe the universe is quiet because that bridge is narrow. Maybe countless worlds have reached it. Maybe almost none have crossed. And if that is true, then humanity is not simply listening for others. We're approaching the same bridge ourselves. And perhaps that is why the silence feels so personal. Because when we imagine other civilizations vanishing, we are not only imagining distant worlds under unfamiliar stars, we are imagining a path that may also belong to us, a path where intelligence rises, learns to shape its world, reaches toward the sky, and then discovers that being clever is not enough to last. Maybe civilizations do not need to be destroyed by one great disaster. Maybe they simply burn briefly, a spark in the dark, bright for a moment, then gone. This possibility is easy to underestimate, because from inside a civilization, everything feels permanent. Cities feel permanent. Nations feel permanent. Languages, borders, beliefs, technologies, buildings, roads, satellites. All of it feels solid while we are living inside it. But history teaches something quieter. Human civilizations are fragile. They rise from patterns of climate, food, cooperation, energy, geography, memory, and trust. They depend on systems so complex that no single person can fully understand them. A city exists because water arrives, food arrives, power flows, medicine works, people cooperate, and knowledge survives from one generation to the next. When enough of those systems fail, even a great civilization can become quiet. Not instantly, not always dramatically. Sometimes the lights go out one region at a time. Sometimes the roads are no longer repaired. Sometimes the schools weaken. Sometimes the records are lost. Sometimes the people survive. But the civilization that once gave them power fades around them. Now imagine that happening on a planetary scale. An intelligent species reaches technology. It discovers electricity. It builds machines, industries, communication networks, observatories, and spacecraft. For a short while, from the outside, its world becomes detectable. It leaks radio waves, its atmosphere changes, its night side glows with artificial light. Its satellites flicker around the planet like a thin ring of thought. Then the fragile balance begins to break. Maybe it is war. Maybe it is climate. Maybe it is disease. Maybe it is resource exhaustion. Maybe it is a technology that spreads faster than wisdom. Maybe it is not one thing at all, but many things at once, each problem making the others harder to solve. And after a few centuries, the planet grows quiet again. The species may not vanish completely. That is important. The silence of a civilization does not always mean extinction. A world can lose its technological voice and still remain alive. People or beings like people may continue in smaller communities. They may remember fragments of what was lost. They may tell stories of lights in the sky that their ancestors built. They may live among ruins they no longer know how to repair. From space, the planet would no longer look like a civilization. It would look like a world. Clouds, oceans, continents, weather. Maybe forests returning over old roads. Maybe deserts covering old cities. Maybe satellites slowly falling from orbit, burning as brief lines of fire across the atmosphere. After enough time, even the ruins would soften. Wind, water, ice, heat, and biology are patient. Stone cracks, metal rusts, glass breaks. Concrete turns back toward dust. Coastlines move, volcanoes bury, rivers cut new paths, plants grow over walls, animals nest in towers. The planet keeps changing because planets do not preserve memory for long unless memory becomes stone, and even stone is temporary. A civilization could live, speak, build and collapse, and after a few million years almost nothing obvious would remain. From another star, nothing would remain at all. This is one of the most haunting answers to the silence. Maybe the galaxy has had many voices. Maybe they simply did not last. Maybe they appeared like fireflies across cosmic time, glowing for a moment in different places, never close enough to see one another. A civilization may be detectable for only a thin slice of its planet's history. On Earth, life has existed for billions of years, but technological noise has existed for only about a century. That is not even a heartbeat compared to geological time. If another civilization had pointed its instruments toward Earth 1,000,000 years ago, it would have seen a living planet, but not a technological one. If it looks 1,000,000 years from now, who knows what it will see? Maybe nothing. Maybe something far beyond us. Maybe a quiet world where the traces of our age are buried so deeply that no distant observer could ever know we were here. This timing problem is enormous. Two civilizations should exist in the same galaxy and miss each other completely. One might become radio loud while the other is still single-celled life. One might send signals while the other is covered in ice. One might collapse 10,000 years before the other builds its first telescope. Their histories pass each other like ships in a fog, separated not only by space, but by timing. We often imagine the search for alien life as if everyone exists at once, as if the galaxy is a room, as if civilizations are sitting behind different doors waiting for someone to knock. But the galaxy is not a room. It is a deep ocean of time. Civilizations may rise and fall like waves, each wave real, each wave powerful, each wave gone before the next one breaks. In that kind of universe, silence does not mean nothing ever happened. It may mean that almost everything happened at the wrong time. There is another reason technological voices may be brief. As civilizations advance, they may become harder to detect. This sounds strange at first. We assume advanced civilizations should be louder. More energy, more machines, more signals, more signs. But our own technology suggests the opposite may happen in some ways. Early radio and television broadcasts leaked outward into space. They spread in all directions, weakly carrying pieces of Earth with them. Voices, music, news, advertisements, military radar, weather reports, fragments of culture. But modern communication is becoming more focused, more efficient, more compressed, more directed through cables, satellites, and narrow beams. A careless young civilization may be noisy. An older one may become quiet. Not because it dies, but because wasteful broadcasting is no longer useful. If advanced civilizations use tight laser links, underground networks, quantum communication, or technologies we cannot imagine, they may produce very little that escapes into space. They may be alive, intelligent, and powerful, but almost invisible from far away. To a young species like us, they would look silent. A planet could have minds on it and still not shout. A star system could hold a civilization and still appear natural. The galaxy could be full of quiet intelligence. Each world wrapped inside its own efficient systems, with no reason to leak its thoughts into the void. But even that possibility carries loneliness. Because if advanced civilizations naturally become quiet, then the universe may never become a place of easy conversation. The older and wiser a civilization becomes, the less likely it may be to announce itself. The loudest civilizations may be the youngest, the most vulnerable, the most temporary, like us. We are loud because we are new. We are detectable because we are inefficient. We are calling out partly because we do not yet know whether calling is wise. And maybe every civilization passes through this same brief phase. A century or two of noise, a few generations of radio leakage, a few deliberate messages sent with hope and uncertainty. Then silence. Either from collapse or from maturity. From across the galaxy, catching that moment would be almost impossible. It would be like trying to see one match flare on a mountain range from across an ocean, while looking in the right direction during the exact second it burns. This may be why the sky gives us nothing certain. Not because no one has ever been there, not because no one has ever wondered, but because civilization, as a visible thing, may be brief. The universe is old, but the window of detectability may be small. And if that is true, then there may be sadness hidden in the stars, signals that crossed Earth before eyes existed to see the sky, messages that arrived when oceans covered everything, warnings that passed during the age of dinosaurs, greetings that moved through our solar system while humans were still thousands of generations away from building a receiver. And perhaps, somewhere far from here, our own signals will one day arrive at a planet that is not ready. They may pass over an ocean with no life, or a forest with no intelligence, or a civilization that has already gone quiet, or a world where someone detects a faint pattern in the noise and wonders what kind of beings once made it. Once made it. That phrase is the shadow behind every message crossing space, because distance turns communication into archaeology. By the time a signal arrives, the sender may be gone. By the time the reply returns, the listener may be gone. The universe may not allow conversation the way we imagine it. It may allow only echoes, fossils of thought, light from dead stars, radio whispers from vanished worlds. So maybe the terrifying reason the universe is silent is not that life never speaks. Maybe it speaks briefly, and space is too large to catch the voice before it fades. Still, there is another possibility, darker in a different way. Maybe advanced civilizations do survive. Maybe they are out there now. Maybe they have learned the rules of the galaxy better than we have, and maybe one of these rules is simple: do not make noise. It sounds simple, almost childish. The kind of warning someone might whisper in a dark forest when they are not sure what is moving between the trees. But perhaps, on the scale of the galaxy, it is one of the oldest lessons any civilization can learn. Maybe the universe is not silent because it is empty. Maybe it is silent because silence is survival. This idea is sometimes called the dark forest. The name comes from a simple image. Imagine a forest at night. Every person inside it is hidden among the trees. No one knows who else is there. No one knows whether the others are peaceful, frightened, hungry, curious, or dangerous. If you call out, you might find a friend, but you might also reveal your position to something that should never have known where you were. In that situation, the safest strategy is not to shout. It is to listen, to stay still, to remain hidden. Maybe the galaxy works the same way. Every civilization wakes up on its own planet, looks into space, and slowly realizes it is not protected by distance in the way it once believed. The stars are far away, yes, but not unreachable forever. Signals can cross the dark. Probes can travel. Technology can grow. A civilization that is weak today may become powerful tomorrow. A civilization that seems harmless from far away may change over time. A species that begins curious may become afraid. A species that begins peaceful may not remain peaceful, and no one can know the intentions of a mind they have never met. That uncertainty is the heart of the fear. If we detected another civilization tomorrow, we would not only be discovering neighbours, we would be discovering risk. We would not know how old they are, how stable they are, how they think, what they value, what they fear, or what they do when they find a younger world. They might be kind, they might be indifferent, they might not even notice us, or they might see us as a future threat. Not because we're dangerous now, but because intelligence changes. A young civilization can become powerful. A planet that only whispers today might build starships later. A species that seems harmless in 1 century might become something very different in 10,000 years. From a cosmic perspective, waiting may be dangerous. If an advanced civilization believes survival is the highest rule, it might not wait to learn whether a newly discovered species will become friendly. It might act first, from fear, calculation, or ancient habit. That is the darkest version of the idea, a universe where every civilization hides because any civilization that reveals itself is eventually removed. In such a universe, the silence would not be mysterious. It would be evidence. The loud ones are gone, the quiet ones remain. This is not a comforting thought, but it is powerful because it explains why even advanced civilizations might choose not to announce themselves. They may know something we do not. They may have listened longer. They may have found ruins, warnings, dead signals, or histories written in the remains of worlds that spoke too freely. Maybe silence is not natural. Maybe silence is learned. Imagine a young civilization much like ours. It discovers radio. It sends messages into space. It beams greetings toward nearby stars. It places records on spacecraft. It celebrates the idea of being found. Then, centuries later, it discovers evidence of another world that did the same thing long ago. A world that became visible. A world that sent signals. A world that no longer exists. What lesson would that teach? Would that civilization keep broadcasting? Or would it turn its transmitters inward, narrow its beams, hide its waste heat, control its signals, and teach its children that the universe is not a place to shout into? Maybe every civilization begins with wonder. Maybe every old civilization ends in caution. That alone could create a silent galaxy, not an empty one, a frightened one. There is another layer to this. Even if no civilization is aggressive, uncertainty itself can still produce silence. If no one knows the rules, staying quiet may simply be the most rational choice. You do not need evil aliens to create a dark forest. You only need distance, fear, and incomplete information. On Earth, trust is difficult even between humans who share the same planet, the same biology, the same basic needs. We misunderstand each other constantly. Nations mistrust nations. Groups mistrust groups. Individuals hide their intentions. Cooperation is possible, but it takes communication, time, shared norms, and the ability to correct mistakes. Across interstellar distances, almost none of that exists. A message to another star takes years, decades, centuries, or longer. There is no quick explanation, no immediate apology, no way to clarify tone, no shared history, no common culture, no guarantee that the recipient understands the message the way it was meant. A greeting could look like a threat, a scientific signal could look like a weapon test, a map could look like a target. Even kindness becomes risky when it travels through ignorance. So perhaps civilizations do not hide because they are cruel. They hide because they are careful. And if the careful survive longer than the loud, then over time the galaxy naturally becomes quiet. There is something chilling about that, because humanity is not quiet, not completely. Our planet has been leaking signals for more than a century. We have sent deliberate messages. We have broadcast radar into space. We have attached records to spacecraft. We have placed our location, our biology, our music, our images, and our curiosity into the dark. We have behaved like a young species that still believes discovery is mostly good. Maybe it is. Maybe the fear is unnecessary. Maybe the universe is not a forest, but an ocean, and every signal is a bottle thrown into the waves. Maybe one day someone kind will find it. Maybe the first voice we hear will not be a danger, but a relief. Maybe advanced civilizations remember their own loneliness and treat younger worlds with care. That is possible too. The dark forest is only one answer, not a proven truth, but it stays in the mind because it changes the emotional meaning of silence. Before, silence felt like absence. Now, silence can feel like intention. A quiet star is no longer just a star with no one around it. It might be a star system where someone learned not to speak. A natural-looking planet might be inhabited by minds that know better than to glow too brightly. A civilization might be watching, not with hostility, but with the patience of something that has survived by never drawing attention. And if that is true, our search becomes stranger. We're not only asking, is anyone there? We're asking, would they let us know? We often imagine contact as a moment of revelation. A signal arrives, a message is decoded, the world changes, humanity realizes it is not alone. But what if the older civilizations have no interest in being known? What if the galaxy has already decided silently that contact is too dangerous? What if every long-lived species eventually reaches the same conclusion? Listen carefully, learn quietly, do not answer. Then the universe could be full of intelligence and still appear empty. This may be one of the most terrifying answers because it means the silence is not a failure of life. It is not a failure of intelligence. It is not even necessarily a sign of extinction. It is strategy. A galaxy of hidden minds, a sky full of doors that remain closed. And somewhere among them, Earth glows softly, noisy and young, still sending pieces of itself outward. Our songs, our radar, our television ghosts, our messages of peace, our location, our hope. Maybe no one has heard yet. Maybe no one ever will. Or maybe someone has heard and has chosen not to reply. That thought is difficult to hold for long, because a silent universe can be lonely, but a listening universe is something else. Still, whether the universe is empty, grieving, careful, or afraid, one fact remains. We have not been completely silent. Our signals are already leaving Earth. They've been leaving for a long time now, not as one clear voice, not as one perfect message travelling bravely into the dark, but as fragments, leaks, bursts, reflections, radar pulses, television ghosts, military transmissions, weather data, music, news, arguments, laughter, warnings, advertisements. The ordinary noise of a young technological world slowly spilling beyond its atmosphere. Earth has not been quiet. From space, our planet is not only blue and white and alive, it is also surrounded by an expanding shell of electromagnetic memory. A faint, invisible bubble moving outward at the speed of light, carrying pieces of the 20th and 21st centuries into the stars. The first strong radio signals did not stay here. They spread. They moved past the moon in a little more than a second, past Mars in minutes, past Jupiter in less than an hour, past Neptune in a few hours. Then they kept going, leaving the planets behind, crossing the outer dark, moving into the space between stars. Every year that bubble grows larger. Some of our earliest broadcasts are now more than 100 light-years away. That means they have passed thousands of stars. Somewhere out there, weak traces of Earth's first radio age are still moving, stretched thin across the galaxy. In a way, humanity has already announced itself, not with confidence, not with wisdom, but simply by becoming technological. The moment we learned to send energy through the air, Earth began whispering into space. But this idea is more complicated than it first seems, because most of our signals become incredibly weak as they travel. A broadcast that seems powerful on Earth spreads outward in all directions, thinning as the sphere expands. The farther it goes, the more diluted it becomes. By the time ordinary television or radio leakage reaches another star, it may be so faint that detecting it would be extremely difficult, maybe impossible, unless the civilization listening has instruments far beyond our own. So perhaps Earth is not shouting. Perhaps we're only breathing. A small technological breath into an enormous darkness. Some signals, however, are stronger. Radar signals aimed at planets, asteroids, or spacecraft can be more focused and powerful. Deliberate messages have also been sent towards certain stars or star clusters, carrying information about humanity, mathematics, biology, or the location of Earth. These messages are rare, but they matter emotionally, because they were not accidents. Someone chose to send them. Someone looked at the sky and decided that silence should not be the only thing between worlds. There is something beautiful about that, and something frightening. A deliberate message is an act of hope, but also an act of exposure. It says in some form we are here, we exist, we're thinking, we're listening, this is where we live. For most of human history, Earth was hidden by distance. It had life, but no technological signature strong enough to notice across the stars. Anyone looking from far away might have seen oxygen in our atmosphere, perhaps signs of biology, perhaps a living world, but they would not have heard us. Then, in the last century, something changed. The planet became electronically awake. We built towers, transmitters, satellites, radars, deep space networks, and antennas. We began speaking not only across cities and oceans, but into the sky itself. Some of those signals were never meant for aliens, they were meant for us. For ships, aircraft, weather stations, televisions, phones, spacecraft, armies, scientists, and ordinary people trying to reach one another. But space does not care what a signal was meant for. If energy escapes, it travels, so pieces of Earth have already gone ahead of us. Long before any human body reaches another star, our noise will. There is something strange about imagining that. A song leaving Earth and crossing a cold cloud of interstellar gas. A sports broadcast moving past a red dwarf. A radar pulse sliding through darkness where no human eye will ever look. The voice of someone long dead passing silently through a star system that may have planets of its own. Most of it will fade into background noise. Most of it will never be noticed. But it is still out there, moving. The galaxy now contains a tiny expanding shell of human history. If another civilization could detect it, what would they learn about us? They might not hear clean words. They might not understand language. They might detect only patterns, artificial regularity, energy arranged in ways nature rarely produces, signals that suggest technology, intention and structure. They might know, simply, that someone was here, or is here, depending on distance. That is one of the strange things about space. To a civilization 50 light-years away, Earth's older signals are arriving now. To a civilization 100 light-years away, they may be receiving the first faint hints of our radio age. To someone farther away, Earth may still appear silent. Our technological voice has not reached them yet. Most of the galaxy has no idea we exist, if anyone is there at all. Our signal bubble is tiny compared to the Milky Way. The galaxy is about 100,000 light-years across. Our loudest century of radio presence has reached only a small local neighborhood, a thin sphere around one ordinary star. From the perspective of the whole galaxy, humanity's voice has barely left the room. This is important because sometimes we imagine that because we have sent signals, the universe should have answered. But our messages have not travelled very far, and if they reach anyone, a reply would need just as long to come back. A message sent to a star 50 light-years away takes 50 years to arrive. A reply takes 50 years to return. A simple exchange takes a century. For stars hundreds or thousands of light-years away, communication becomes something almost geological. Questions and answers separated by lifetimes, civilizations, perhaps entire eras of history. And so our outgoing signals do not make us part of a conversation yet. They make us part of a waiting. We send, then time begins. There is another unsettling thought. Even if someone detects us, they may not respond. They may be too far away to care, too advanced to be interested, too cautious to reveal themselves, too different to understand what they have found, or perhaps by the time our signal reaches them, they will no longer exist. The same is true in reverse. Somewhere in the galaxy, signals from other civilizations may already be travelling toward us. They may have been travelling for centuries, thousands of years, millions. A message may be on its way right now, crossing the dark between stars, It may be perfectly clear. It may be intentional. It may be the answer humanity has wanted since the first eye looked upward. But it has not arrived yet. Or perhaps it arrived before we were able to hear it. That is the cruelty of timing again. Earth only recently became capable of listening. Before radio astronomy, before sensitive receivers, before modern observatories, the sky could have carried artificial signals and we would have missed them completely. The universe may have spoken while we had no ears, and now that we have ears, we do not know where to listen. The sky is vast. Frequencies are many. Signals may be brief. They may repeat rarely. They may be directed somewhere else. They may be hidden inside noise. They may be using physics we have not learned to use. Searching for them is not like listening in a quiet room. It is like standing beside an ocean during a storm and trying to hear one whispered sentence from the other side of the world. Still, we listen. That matters. Humanity listens because silence has not killed the question. It has made the question stronger. We build radio telescopes in deserts and valleys. We scan stars. We study exoplanet atmospheres. We look for chemical fingerprints that might suggest life. We search for unusual heat around stars that could hint at technology. We send spacecraft outward, even though they move slowly, carrying records, plaques, names, numbers, and symbols. Some of these gestures may never be found, but they reveal something about us. We are afraid of the silence, but we are also drawn to it. We want to know. Even after imagining danger, collapse, distance, and the great filter, we still want the universe to answer. We still hope the silence is temporary. We still hope that somewhere, around some quiet star, another mind exists that has looked into the dark and felt the same ache. And maybe that is what makes our signals meaningful, even if no one hears them. They are proof that, for a little while at least, one planet became aware and tried to reach beyond itself. One small world built instruments. One young species listened. One civilization, fragile and uncertain, sent pieces of its mind into the night. But those pieces now face the oldest barrier in the universe: distance. Because even if someone hears us, and even if they decide to answer, the space between stars does not hurry. Light has a speed, and that speed turns every conversation into an echo. This is one of the most difficult truths to feel because on Earth, communication seems almost instant. We speak and someone across the world can hear us a fraction of a second later. A message crosses oceans, a video call connects continents. News travels faster than emotion can settle. We've grown used to the planet where distance has almost disappeared. But space does not work like Earth. Space remembers distance. It preserves it. It stretches every message across time until a conversation becomes something colder, slower, and stranger. The fastest anything can travel is the speed of light. Light moves so quickly that in daily life it feels infinite. It can circle Earth several times in 1 second. It reaches the moon in a little more than a second. It reaches the sun from Earth in about 8 minutes. But between stars, even light begins to feel slow. The nearest star system to our own is Alpha Centauri. A message sent there would take more than 4 years to arrive. If someone there received it and answered immediately, the reply would take more than 4 years to come back. A simple hello would take almost 9 years to complete. That is our closest neighbour. Not a distant galaxy, not the far edge of the Milky Way, the closest star. Already conversation becomes waiting. Now, imagine a civilization 50 light-years away. That is still nearby by galactic standards. Our message takes 50 years to reach them. Their reply takes 50 years to return. A question asked by one generation may be answered by the next. 100 light-years away, the delay becomes 2 centuries for a full exchange. 1,000 light-years away, a reply takes 2,000 years. Across the Milky Way, messages may take tens of thousands of years. By then, languages change, nations vanish, religions rise and fall, cities are built and buried, species evolve, civilizations can transform beyond recognition or disappear completely. This means interstellar communication is not like a phone call. It is not even like writing a letter. It is more like carving a message into stone and throwing it into an ocean, knowing it may wash up on another shore. After everyone who remembers you is gone. That is why distance makes the silence so cruel. Even if the universe contains other civilizations, they may not be close enough in time to become neighbors in the way we want them to be. They may exist, but every word between us could take longer than a human life. Their present is hidden from us. Our present is hidden from them. When we look at the stars, we do not see them as they are. We see them as they were. The light from nearby stars may be a few years old. Light from distant stars may be thousands of years old. Light from other galaxies may be millions or billions of years old. Astronomy is not only looking across space, it is looking backward through time. So if we saw a distant civilization, we might not be seeing a living civilization. We might be seeing an old image, a fossil made of light. Their cities could already be gone, their planet could have changed, their star could have grown unstable, their species could have moved away, transformed, collapsed, or become something we would not recognize. We would be studying their past, not meeting their present, and if they saw us, the same would be true. A civilization 1,000 light years away looking at Earth right now would not see us as we are. They would see Earth around the time when humans were living in the early medieval period. No satellites, no radio towers, no electric cities, no obvious technological civilization. To them, Earth might appear alive, but quiet. A civilization 10,000 light years away would see Earth before agriculture spread across much of the planet. A civilization 65 million light years away would see Earth under the rule of dinosaurs. To most of the universe, humanity has not happened yet. That thought is almost impossible to hold. We feel like the present is real everywhere at once. But in the universe there is no shared present in the way our instincts imagine. Everything we know about distant places is delayed. Every signal arrives late. Every image is old. Every message is a ghost. Maybe this is why the universe feels silent. Not because no one is speaking, but because every voice is trapped inside time. Somewhere, a civilization may be sending signals now, but now has no simple meaning between stars. Their now and our now are separated by distance. Their message may be crossing space, but it will not reach us until a future Earth that may be very different from the one that exists tonight. And messages that reach us now may come from civilizations that are already gone. That possibility changes what first contact might mean. We often imagine it as a beginning. A signal arrives, humanity decodes it. We realize we are not alone. We answer. A relationship begins. But what if the first signal we ever detect is not an invitation? What if it is a remnant? A transmission sent from a world that died before mammals walked upright? A warning from a civilization whose ruins are now dust? A song from a planet whose oceans boiled away? A mathematical sequence from beings who once believed someone might answer, not knowing their message would arrive long after their own sky had gone quiet? Then first contact would not be a meeting. It would be archaeology. We would not be speaking with neighbors. We would be listening to the dead. And perhaps, somewhere far away, our own signals will become the same thing. If Earth's early radio waves are ever detected by another intelligence, they may not know whether we still exist. They may hear a fragment of music, a burst of radar, a pattern that reveals technology, and they may wonder about the beings who made it. Were they peaceful? Were they afraid? Did they survive? Did they ever leave their planet? Are they still there? By the time they could answer, the truth may have changed. This is the tragedy built into cosmic communication. Every message is separated from its maker. Every reply arrives too late. Every conversation is haunted by the possibility that one side is already gone. And yet there is beauty in it too, because even a ghost signal means someone existed. Even a delayed message means the universe was not completely silent. A voice from a dead world would still change everything. It would tell us that life became aware somewhere else. It would tell us that thought is not unique to Earth. It would mean that under another sun, matter once arranged itself into memory, fear, hope, science, and longing. Even if they were gone, they would not be nothing. They would become part of our story. And perhaps that is all interstellar communication can be at first. Not conversation, recognition, not friendship, evidence, not shared life, shared loneliness across time. Still, the delay creates another problem. If communication is so slow, then even civilizations that know about each other may not be able to help each other. A warning about danger may arrive after the danger's already passed or already destroyed the listener. A request for knowledge may be answered after the civilization that asked has changed beyond recognition. A map, a cure, a philosophy, a confession. All of it travels at the speed of light, and no faster. The universe allows awareness, but not closeness, at least not easily. This may be one of the quietest reasons the universe is silent, not because no one is alive, not because no one is intelligent, not because no one sends messages, but because the distances are so vast that the normal meaning of communication breaks down. A galaxy can contain many minds and still have no real conversation. They can exist like islands separated by oceans that take centuries to cross. They can see old light from one another. They can send signals. They can wait. But they may never truly meet in the same moment. And maybe that is why the night sky feels the way it does. Beautiful, crowded, ancient, and unreachable. The stars are not just far away in space. They're far away in time. Every point of light is both a place and a memory. Every possible voice is delayed, weakened, aged by the journey. So when we ask why the universe is silent, perhaps part of the answer is that the universe is too large for voices to remain alive by the time they arrive. The silence may not be emptiness. It may be distance doing what distance does, stretching every hello until it becomes history, turning every answer into an echo, turning every civilization into a ghost to anyone too far away to reach it in time. And after all of this, the rare birth of life, the unlikely rise of intelligence, the danger of the great filter, the brief flame of civilizations, the fear of being seen, and the cruelty of a distance, we finally come back to the question where we began. Maybe the silence is not one mystery. Maybe it is many mysteries layered together. Maybe the silence itself is the answer. Not one clean answer. Not one simple reason we can point to and say this is why the stars do not speak. But a deeper answer made from many smaller truths, all layered together across the dark. Maybe the universe is silent because life is difficult to begin. Maybe chemistry does not easily become biology. Maybe oceans can wait for billions of years and never produce a single living cell. Maybe countless planets have had warmth, water, minerals, storms, and time, and still nothing ever woke up beneath their skies. Maybe the first step is the rarest one, a universe full of habitable worlds, but almost no inhabited ones. Or maybe life begins often, but remains simple. Maybe the galaxy is not dead, but quiet in a different way. Maybe beneath ice-covered moons and alien oceans, life drifts in darkness. Maybe strange organisms cling to warm rocks around distant stars. Maybe there are living worlds everywhere, but they do not build, do not ask, do not send. They breathe, divide, grow, adapt, and vanish without ever knowing that the stars above them are suns. A universe alive but not awake. Or maybe intelligence itself is the rare accident. Maybe consciousness like ours is not the natural destination of life, but a strange branch that only appears when countless conditions align. A stable world, a changing environment, bodies that can shape tools, social groups, memory, language, fire, curiosity, the ability to pass knowledge forward without losing it. Change one part of that chain, and a planet may remain forever wordless. It may have animals beneath alien clouds, songs in forests, eyes in oceans, migration, hunting, play, fear, beauty, but no mathematics, no astronomy, no transmitters, no one looking up and asking why the sky is silent. Or maybe intelligence appears, but does not last. This may be the answer we fear most, because it feels closest to us. A civilization rises. It discovers energy, machines, medicine, industry, communication, and spaceflight. It looks upward. It realizes it is living on a planet around a star inside a galaxy. It begins to listen. Then the same intelligence that opened the universe also opens danger. Weapons become too powerful, systems become too complex. The climate changes, trust breaks, technology moves faster than wisdom. The species can reshape its world before it has learned how to protect it. For a while it shines, then it fades. Maybe the galaxy has seen this many times. Worlds that became bright for a century or 1,000 years, and then grew quiet again. Their signals crossed space, but not at the right time. Their ruins were buried by weather and geology. Their satellites fell, their cities cracked, their names vanished. From another star they became indistinguishable from nature. Maybe the silence is not the silence of no one ever existing. Maybe it is the silence of worlds that did not survive long enough to be found. Or maybe the old civilizations do survive. Maybe they are not gone. Maybe they're simply quiet. Maybe every species that lasts long enough learns caution. It listens before it speaks. It studies the dark before it reveals itself. It discovers that space is not only beautiful and vast, but uncertain. It learns that a signal's not just a greeting, it is a location, a confession, a risk. And so the old ones become careful. They narrow their beams, hide their waste, control their light, stop leaking their thoughts into the void. They do not shout across the galaxy because they no longer think shouting is wise. In that kind of universe, silence is not emptiness. It is strategy. A sky full of closed doors, a forest full of listeners, and perhaps Earth is young enough to still believe that being heard is the same as being saved. But even if no one is hiding, even if no one is afraid, distance remains, the most patient barrier of all. The stars are so far apart that even light becomes slow. A message to the nearest star takes years. A message across the galaxy takes tens of thousands of years. A signal may leave one world when it is young and arrive at another when the sender is gone. A reply may return to a planet that has changed beyond recognition. The universe may allow voices, but not conversations. It may allow evidence, but not closeness. It may allow one civilization to know another existed, but only as a ghost knows a memory. This is why the silence cannot be explained by one answer alone. The universe may be silent because life is rare, intelligence is rarer, civilizations are brief, old beings are careful, and distance turns every voice into an echo. All of these things may be true at once, and together they create the quiet we hear when we listen to the sky. A quiet so large that it surrounds every planet. A quiet older than every language. A quiet deep enough to make the human mind invent gods, myths, constellations and questions just to feel less alone beneath it. But there is another possibility, a softer one. Maybe we are early. Maybe the universe is still young in the only way that matters. Yes, it is billions of years old. Yes, stars have lived and died. Yes, galaxies have collided. But many stars will live far longer than our sun. Red dwarf stars may burn for trillions of years. The age of planets may stretch far beyond the age we know now. The future of the universe may contain more chances for life than the past ever did. Maybe we are not late to the cosmic story. Maybe we are near the beginning. Maybe the silence is not a graveyard. Maybe it is a dawn before many voices have learned to speak. That thought does not erase the fear, but it changes the shape of it. It reminds us that silence is not always absence. Sometimes silence comes before the first note, before the first word, before the first answer. Maybe somewhere on a world that has not yet formed, life will begin long after Earth is gone. Maybe under the light of small red star, oceans will stir for the first time 1 trillion years from now. Maybe intelligence will rise in a universe where our sun is only ancient dust. Maybe something will look into its own sky and wonder why everything seems so quiet. And maybe, if any trace of us survives, we will be part of the answer it finds. That is what makes our own moment feel so fragile and so important. We are not masters of the universe. We are not ancient. We are not loud on a galactic scale. We are a young species on a small world listening from the edge of one ordinary star. And still, for a brief moment in cosmic history, the universe has become aware of itself through us. Atoms made in stars became eyes. Dust became memory. Matter became music, fear, mathematics, love, and the need to know whether anyone else is there. That may not answer the silence, but it gives the silence meaning. Because even if no one hears us, the act of listening matters. Even if no one answers, the question matters. Even if we are alone, or almost alone, then every living thing on Earth becomes more precious than we can easily understand. Every forest, every ocean, every child looking up at the moon, every voice, every kindness, every small human life becomes part of something rare beyond measure. And if we are not alone, then somewhere the same may be true for others. Other beings under other skies carrying their own fears, their own names, their own histories, their own fragile hope that the darkness is not empty. Maybe they are listening too. Maybe they are too far away. Maybe their signal has not arrived. Maybe ours has not reached them. Maybe across the impossible distances, the universe is filled with questions moving silently between stars, each one waiting for a listener who may not yet exist. So tonight, as the stars drift silently above us, maybe the question is not only whether someone is out there. Maybe the question is whether the universe gives any civilization enough time to find another before the darkness carries its voice away. For now, we keep listening. We listen with radio dishes in quiet valleys. We listen with telescopes above the atmosphere. We listen through data, through light, through chemistry, through the faint dimming of distant stars. We listen because silence has not ended our curiosity. It has deepened it. And perhaps that is what separates us from the darkness. Not that we have an answer, but that we can ask. Somewhere above us, the Milky Way continues its slow turning. Stars are being born, planets are cooling, oceans may be forming. Signals, if they exist, are crossing distances too wide to imagine. Ancient light is arriving, other light is leaving. The night remains enormous, and Earth keeps moving through it, small, blue, temporary, awake. If you're still here, thank you for travelling through this silence with us. Rest now. Let the stars keep their secrets a little longer. And maybe, somewhere in the dark, another world is listening too.